everyone! Welcome back to Let's Play Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. This is Vitafuser. In our last episode, we started our trial, and just when we thought we'd gotten a bit of a break, our witness seems to have punctured that. Let's see where this goes. Scientists. Very well, the defendant may testify again. Provide us with a scientific explanation as to why the inconsistency asserted by the defense fails to hold. In the name of Apollo, I will, my lord. Shouldn't that be Hephaestus, since he's the god of forging? What do I know? Actually, a lot, considering I play Shin Megami Tensei. To be clear, I'm still at the stage of gathering data in my research. My hypothesis states that the kinesis cannot transport metal, though. Hence the metal weapon would have stayed put. In other words, the point just raised by Mr. Naruhodo isn't an inconsistency at all. Mr. Adamman was the patron of my research. Without him, my work wouldn't have been possible. Now I have duty to protect the incredible machine that we built together. So, the thrust of your testimony, Professor, is that based upon his hypothesis, metal objects cannot be moved by his method of instantaneous kinesis. In other words, since a screwdriver is made of metal, even if it remained lodged in the victim's chest, its subsequent discovery on the stage, despite the victim being found elsewhere, is not an inconsistency. That doesn't make a damn amount of sense. And therefore, Professor Albert Hairbrain could still have been the killer. My great hypothesis holds, you see! We had to make the cage used to contain the subject from wood for that very reason. I was not addressing you, witness! Professor Hairbrain? Yes? Whose side are you on here? I don't take sides, Mr. Naruhodo. No. My only interest lies in upholding my hypothesis. I'm a scientist, after all. Dude, this is for all the marbles. Is he working for us or against us? It's very hard to tell. Let's see how you cross-examine this testimony, my Nipponese friend. Yes, fire away, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, for the love of... Alright, let's see how this goes. Alright, the volume is down, we made the right choice. You say that according to your hypothesis, nothing made of metal can be beamed by instantaneous kinesis using the machine you made, is that right? Well, what about his glasses, then? In that case, I'd ask you to have a look at this photograph that was taken at the scene. In particular, I'd like you to pay attention to the victim's face. You can clearly see that Mr. Asman is wearing a pair of spectacles with a metal rim. Metal! No! Metal can't! That's not... metal? No! We've already established the proposed murder weapon, the screwdriver, was found on the stage. However, if your hypothesis correctly predicted that outcome, it should also have predicted that the metal rim spectacles would be found in the same place. Ah! My hypothesis! My hypothesis! Mr. Hairbrain, this isn't easy for me to say, but your hypothesis is clearly flawed. Hey! Counsel, what is the implication of this? If, on the day in question, the alleged instantaneous kinesis never actually took place, then it's entirely possible the victim was killed somewhere other than on stage. And in that case, someone other than the defendant could have been the culprit. But my hypothesis! It's sound! I proved it that day! My experiment was a success! The experiment was proof of all my work! If I could say something here in my capacity as a fellow of the Royal Society. Yes, Joe number 4, go ahead. As a matter of science, there's one thing I simply cannot abide. And it's a fraud who pretends to be a fellow man of science. What? Wait! Great Scott! Are you suggesting my science is suspect? It's just been disproved, hasn't it? All in front of us. In other words, the whole demonstration was complete nonsense from start to finish. Believe me, my fellow jurors, when I tell you that this man is a heel, a bounder, and a fraud. Okay, I think that's a little much. I say the wreckage of that machine should be stripped down and thoroughly examined. No, never! That machine is the essence of my entire hypothesis. It's protected by the Special Dispensation for Scientific Equipment Act. What the devil is that blasted act all about, eh? Who made up such a deft rule? I don't like the way this seems to be going. What's the best way for me to help the professor? We gotta raise an objection.
Objection.
Professor Hairbrain has yet to perfect his invention. That would seem to be the case, yes. But even so, what? Going to such trouble and expense to create a fake machine to display in public? He would have absolutely no reason to do such a thing.
Objection.
He had an obvious reason to do exactly that. For the research grant money. What? If the government was foolish enough to deem that man's ridiculous notion plausible, he and his conspirators would have received a handsome sum indeed. Conspirators? What would be the value of such a grant? £10? In an order of magnitude out, madam. £500 a year! Oh, yeah, they've answered him on that much for years. The Society's noticed an increase in bogus public demonstrations in the field of science recently. And plenty of scientists arguing with each other to get the largest slice of the funding cake. Yeah, it must be like the people who think that vaccines cause autism. Bogus science. You can't get much more bogus than that. People's greed is plenty motive enough for murder, I assure you. No, no, no! I haven't deceived anyone! Least of all the government! My hypothesis is sound! Science is sound! Please, you must believe me!
Objection.
No matter how unbelievable this hypothesis may seem to be to you, ladies and gentlemen, the fact remains the victim was transported instantly to the Crystal Tower. Which means that the experiment was a success. Who are you trying to fool? Barak? And therefore, the only person who could possibly have committed this murder is the accused. Barak. Where is this heading? I've no idea. My lord, if I may. Yes, Lord Van Zeeks. The prosecution would like to summon new witnesses to the stand. New witnesses? What would be the nature of their involvement? They were spectators of the demonstration of the exhibition, who were occupying special seats. Like eyewitnesses? Very well. The court grants the prosecution's request. I would very much like to hear from eyewitnesses to the incident. The prosecution's stance is clear. This experiment was no pastiche. The accused killed the financier victim there on the public stage before the very eyes of the spectators. Now, my learned friend... Yes? It's time for you to make your own stance clear. There's clearly a flaw in the professor's hypothesis. I can definitely see that. But where does that leave me? We shall take a short recess now. during which time the prosecution will prepare its new witnesses to take the stand. As you wish, my lord. Good. In that case, court is adjourned for 20 minutes. I suppose I could have made it a little bit of a longer episode. Definitely save. I don't care what people say that you're not supposed to save in the middle of a session. I've played Shin Megami Tensei enough times to know that not saving is a disaster waiting to happen. Mr. Naruhodo, what on earth were you playing at just now? Or rather, what on earth were you playing at all along? My hypothesis! My amazing hypothesis! You've been picking holes in it from the start! Sorry about that. But you promised me! You said you'd prove that granite explosion was an accident, not a murder. You said you'd keep my precious invention from falling into anyone else's hand. All you've done so far is try to undermine me! Yes, I did make you a promise. You're right. I said I'd believe in you and fight for your freedom to the very end. But I also told you I was no scientist. I don't understand your hypothesis. The fact is, there's an undeniable flaw in your logic, isn't there? But if I just run through some equations... You see, it's because my work isn't complete. Perhaps it is. Nevertheless, a man died as a consequence, didn't he? Oh. Oh, no! You're right. You're so right. It's all my fault. And I have no right to blame you for my failures. I'm a disaster. Not just as a scientist, but as a human being. I wouldn't go that far. Well, that might be a little over the top. Do you know who you've been talking to? And while we're on the subject, what about Barack? He's being awful. Claiming his old university friend to be a murderer, you mean? He's a disaster. Not as a prosecutor, but as a human being. Oh, come on. Oh, but no, wait. He's the Reaper, isn't he? Perhaps he's not classified as Homo sapiens anymore. Glad that's cleared up. Can I double-check something with you? Ah, yes? What? The machine and demonstration you prepared, they were based entirely on your hypothesis, I presume? There was no trickery involved. I drew the plans for the machine with my very own hands. Every line was painstakingly drawn with a firm belief that science is the only future. So yes, it's true my hypothesis hasn't reached maturity yet, but please, Mr. Naruhodo, you must believe in it. Alright, Professor. I understand. Counsel defendant! The prosecution's witnesses are ready to take the stand. Court is about to be in session again. Make your way to the courtroom, please. It all hinges on that demonstration. If the professor's hypothesis is sound as he claims, it leaves him as the only person who could possibly have killed the victim. While on the other hand, Mr. Sholmes was adamant. A practical implementation such as was attempted by the professor at the Great Exhibition is quite impossible. So really, what should I be trying to prove here? Someone's trying to scam this guy or something. Alright, here we go. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby reconvene the proceedings of this court. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready for the new witnesses to testify? Prosecution is ready, my lord. As is the defense, my lord. So, Lord Van Zeeks, I believe these next witnesses saw the demonstration on the day in question with their own eyes. Indeed they did. And as luck would have it, one of them is a police detective. So the testimony we are about to hear can be considered highly reliable. Perfect. A detective of all people. Is this Lestrade? Prosecution's stance remains unchanged. Though it ended in tragedy, the demonstration on the day in question was scientifically sound. And consequently, the sole person with the opportunity to have committed the act of murder is the only other individual to have been present at the stage at the time, the accused. Thank you, counsel. The prosecution's position is clear, so bring forth your witnesses now. Bailiff, show the witnesses in. The witnesses whose proximity to the incident on the day in question will clarify the truth unequivocally. Yep, there's Lestrade. Witnesses, state your names and occupations for the court to hear. My name is about the Zaloon. I am the impresario of all the hot air balloons in the vicinity of the experimental stage. My name is Wilhelm Gottsrich Sigismund Ornstein. You're the king of Bohemia? I have come to see the great experimentation all the way from my home in Bohemia. I'm very rich. That's a French accent, not a German accent. Jawohl. Even though he's from Bohemia, which is someplace in like Romania or something. Inspector Gina Lestrade, Scotland Yard. I'm a great detective, even Sherlock Holmes agrees. I was on security duty at the exhibition and I got to go up in one of them balloons. It was amazing. Gina, again. But she did mention that she'd seen the disaster from up in a balloon at Chile, didn't she? And she clearly loved every minute of it. There were 3 balloons flying near the public experimentation stage when the incident occurred. 2 of these witnesses were in one such balloon at the time and saw events unfold from the skies above. You make it sound like they were in the clouds. It was only an altitude of circa 60 feet. Very low. This guy looks like Wario. A much nicer version of Wario. Well, you can't see nothing if you fly too high, can you? 60 feet. About 18 meters, then. Thank you for your introductions. Now you will give your formal testimony for the court. Kindly describe exactly what you witnessed, especially those of you who had a vantage point above the stage. Alright, all 3 of you. It was an incident terrible. I am only grateful my balloons were not damaged. There's this huge bang from the stage, and then the next minute, another bang in the sky beside us. And from amid the smoke, a cage appeared out of nowhere. The cage, it fell from the sky like a stone, and crashed into the crystal tower. I didn't get a good look inside the cage, but no one went in near it after it crashed into the tower. A most extraordinary collective account, I must say. Can I just clarify something? There's a detail in the witness's testimony that I have not heard any mention of until now. Specifically, that there were 2 explosions? More precisely, 2 explosions in 2 separate places, yes. When a demonstration began, the balloon carrying the 2 witnesses was around here. There were other balloons in the air nearby at the time, carrying other passengers as well, to be clear. Then, as power was supplied to the machine for the demonstration, the first explosion occurred. The so-called birdcage that contained the victim disappeared from the stage, and a moment later, the second explosion occurred directly adjacent to the balloon carrying the witness. The birdcage appeared inside of the explosion subsequently to plummet down into the crystal tower. That doesn't make a lick of sense. I was very surprised. Suddenly a cage appeared before my eyes with a person inside. The blast was so hot, and I didn't want to miss a thing, so I kept my eyes wide. Okay. Geez, you have an infinite supply of balloons. I still have lots of money. Yeah. Okay, that's... Precisely. Who is this curious infant? I'm told he is a young noble of Bohemian royalty. Apparently, he disguised himself in order to steal unnoticed into the Great Exhibition. Yeah, I'm here in London on a sightseeing trip via my elementary school. We will have the benefit of a child's point of view in the testimony. Do we really need that? Then I remove my mask. This is what I look like. Oh yes, I see. Delightful face, I'm sure. Your Honor, do I even need to bring up Dahlia Hawthorne? Yeah, everybody says so. Great disguise, then. The point is, the testimony of these witnesses further substantiates the fact in the court. Namely, that despite ending in an explosion, instantaneous kinesis was successfully demonstrated. And furthermore, that until the arrival of the police, no one approached the crystal tower where the victim fell. Therefore, only the accused who was with Mr. Asman on the stage could possibly have committed the murder. Yes, thank you, counsel. Prosecution's views on the matter are quite clear. So the defense's cross-examination now, please. Yes, my lord. Alright, where do we go from here? Alright, let's press that. So you actually saw the accident happen from the air. Yep, isn't it amazing what a detective gets to do, eh? I'm telling you, though, being a lawyer's a mug's game. You should join the force and we can go flying together. You know me so well. Yes, well, anyway. Could you tell us exactly what you saw, do you think? Everything. We saw everything, because we were up above it all. A dodgy cove climbing into the cage and that dodgy professor pulling all the levers. And that's what happened. That's when there was that massive bang and the cage disappeared. Just like that. You are describing the moment the subject's body was decomposed by the electricity, I believe. No Beethoven included. I didn't know what I'll make of it. But then there was another bang right there. I looked round and there was a huge great fireball right next to us in the sky. There was nothing there before. Okay, what have you got? Stop chewing on your fingernails, kid. It's a bad habit. Mr. Gotts, does your memory of the day differ? My teacher at elementary school said that when you meet someone for the first time, you should always use your full name. What was it again? Wilhelm Gottfried Sigmund Ornstein. It's a good thing Smo ain't around here, or this would get a lot harder. Just the 4 names, then. The point is, do you have something to say? Something to add in response to Detective Gina Lestrade's last remark, perhaps? Alright, get it right, Otto. It's Inspector Lestrade. Why does everyone have a problem with how I address them at the moment? That is not what I saw. Oh? Yeah, there was a second explosion and it was right beside our balloon. That is true. but I'm sure. Which is what I said, innit? 1 minute there is nothing there, next a massive explosion. My teacher at elementary school said that when someone else is speaking, if you're rude enough to interrupt, you'll have the most awful life imaginable. Are all Bohemians brought up to be so full of joy? Just before the second explosion happened next to our balloon, I clearly witnessed a green balloon flying in the sky. A green balloon? Hey, you what? I never saw nothing like that. When I did, I saw it, and you can't say I didn't. I will complain to the consul. I will cry and scream. My testimony is the truth. I'm Bohemian Prince. You cannot say it's a lie. That is not allowed. You ain't in Bohemia. You're in Britain. Find a pleading royalty card, are you? Typical. Says the orphan who likes to remind people she works for Her Majesty's police. In that case, young man, I must ask you to amend your formal testimony. In the interests of cordial national relations between Great Britain and Bohemia. It was not the skies that exploded, it was green balloons that was next to ours at the time. We'll see if this goes. No! Come on. Of course, I have to frigging examine everything now, don't I? No, that was statement 3. That the victim was never actually on the stage in the first place. The 2 explosions would have thrown everyone watching into a panic for sure. I think I need to find out more about what... Maybe this is it. Yeah, I was on the wrong one. Mr. Loon, in your testimony, you said that all 3 of the balloons you had operating at the time were undamaged. Si, that is correct. If they had been caught in the explosions, you would have been terrible. I wonder if you might know what this is. Ah, I think it may be... See, part of a balloon. A burnt piece of the fabric of the envelope. Sorry, the envelope? Pardon. That is the large round part of the balloon which becomes filled with hot air. It is made from very thick fabric lined with rubber. You do not want it to rip when you are in the sky. Just as I thought. The piece of cloth was found near the experimentation stage. In other words, as Master Gotts testified, a green balloon did indeed explode that day. If all the balloons in the sky above the experimentation stage belong to you, Mr. Loon, then your statement that they were all undamaged clearly contradicts the evidence. No! The balloon exploded that day. Well, the men say so. Maybe everyone on board was killed. Oh no, having just spent 10 old pounds for that experience? How awful. Seems to me like those things crash 50% of the time anyway.
Objection!
The instantaneous kinesis did occur. But after the explosion on the stage, the point of materialization shifted to a location occupied by a loon. Come on! Who are you causing the balloon to explode? Yeah, you all are all idiots. An unfortunate traffic accident, as it were, but it changes nothing about the pertinent facts. Hold it! This I cannot accept! Why not, Mr. Loon? You are suggesting that I am a liar. A person's died in a balloon incidente. There's no need to get fired up, Mr. Loon. The victim was the sole fatality that day. That's right, and I prove it! Balthazar Loon is not a liar. There's no such balloon in the sky. It is not possible. You're saying it's impossible. Why? This court has more important matters to discuss than the number of balloons that were operating that day. Hey!
Objection.
But we can't ignore the fact that nobody appears to have known anything about this other balloon until now. My lord. The defense calls for further testimony from Mr. Loon. I concur. There is clearly more to the truth here than meets the eye. I'm not going to make the obvious joke. It's imperative we clear up the issue of this phantom balloon, I feel. And we will do that next episode.